ignorance of the issue, not knowing what you don't know, get educated. And then it's like a snowball. It starts out incrementally, like I said, maybe it's 500 to 1,000 per job that you're leaving behind. You're running 20 jobs a month times $1,000 that you're leaving, $20,000 times 12. That's $240,000 over the course of a year. You just left on the table and let the insurance companies pocket that profit. So if you want to keep doing that, you do you. But that's what we're here for.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hare. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast.
Far too many contractors are doing the work, but not getting paid what they deserve, often because of avoidable mistakes in their estimates. If you've ever felt frustrated trying to navigate Xactimate or wondered why your supplements aren't getting approved, this episode is for you. Today, we're joined by Alena Wilson, founder of Estimate Mastery and a former Xactware Certified Trainer. She's helped thousands of contractors take control of their estimating process and maximize their payouts. Alena, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here. I'm excited to talk to you today.
So I guess I want to kind of just jump into it. So you've literally trained thousands of contractors. So what led you to create Estimate Mastery?
That's a great question. It came out of the need of seeing that there was a lot of Xactimate and estimate training for the adjusting side of things. That's where I come from. I was training adjusters for hurricane, wind, cat, tornado situations. And there would be a couple of contractors that would trickle into those classes. And I was like, wow, they don't need to know probably 80% of what I'm teaching because this is adjuster stuff. So I started to go research who's training contractors, what do contractors need? And so that's really, how I came into this, is just seeing that nobody had a contractor specific training, because the contractors really only use about, well, unless you're doing program work, you only use about 20 to 30% of what Xactimate really is, because it is an insurance software designed to be used by an insurance company at the end of the day. So I don't like to learn things that don't apply to me. I don't know about you, but that's kind of where it came from, is why are we teaching people stuff that they don't need to know? That's dumb. So
I get that. I probably spend a lot of my day learning things that don't apply to me, but sometimes that's more fun than learning the things that do. So let's kind of talk about that. So you've been an Xactware certified trainer. How does that kind of influence you today?
Well, it teaches you a lot of the skills about how the program works. So I'm also pricing certified as well. So when people come at you, you're like, I can't believe this square foot of this, drywall is this price. And like, well, when you look at the labor yield, let's take a deep look. Like, where do you have the issue? I can have informed conversations like that because I've had that training in that background, and I like to just suss out what's the actual problem here. Is it, the pricing? Is it what you're encountering in your labor? Like, let's get to what the base of the issue is, instead of just being like, Xactimate's too cheap, or with an adjuster, Xactimate's paying too much. It's like, yeah, but let's get to the real issue here. And so, becoming certified and having that background and that knowledge has really helped in that aspect.
Yeah, and when you say let's get to the real issue here, I guess, like, probably a little reductive, but for our folks at home, you're talking about, okay, like, this is a combined line item that covers material and labor. So what's your problem? Is your problem the labor cost? Is your problem the material cost? Like, what's actually going on here? Why are you upset about this line item?
Exactly. And a lot of people don't pay attention to what's called the click for detail. It's just what's called, doing like a deep dive. You can actually open up different properties in there and see maybe the thing that you're asking for just actually isn't included, and it's a separate line item. Like, you have to know, some of these things, or else you're going to lose a lot of money and leave a lot on the table. So that's really the heart of the matter, is what in black and white is there, and what do we really need to be talking about here with the adjuster, or vice versa.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So, like, let's talk about estimating as a process a little bit. So working with contractors, what are the biggest mistakes you tend to see them make, like, before they come to you?
Oh man. Like, do you want like the top 10, the number one.
Yeah. Well, let's start with number one, but I'm down to do 10. I think the people at home are actually really interested in kind of, because they're probably making the same mistakes, right?
Right. So you don't know what you don't know. And the easiest and the biggest lever to move initially is you're leaving tons of line items off that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you can ask for. You don't understand the design of the intent behind Xactimate as a program. Um, I would just say line items are being left behind, which equals money, on every single job. So, if you're not adding a line item that's 200 to 500 per job, oh, you're like, yeah, it's just yeah, but over 10 jobs, over 100 jobs, that adds up. And so that's the easiest lever to move. And it's stuff that's legitimate and reasonable. They just don't know what they don't know. And they're not adding all the correct labor materials to their estimates.
That makes sense. What else? You said you got a bunch.
Oh, yeah, which, they don't ask for O&P. They're like, well, the adjuster's never going to pay it. Well, what if the insurance companies wake up one day and they will pay O&P? Or if it's not added to your estimate, you can't ask for it. They can't even say yes. It's not there. And then you can work backwards from that. It's a great, I don't like the word negotiating. It's a great discussion tool with them. Okay, well, why can't you pay that? I'm a general contractor. I have a license here in the state of Utah. Why can't you pay? It opens up the door for discussion. Okay, you can't pay O&P. What can you pay? Like, you take that off the table just by a lot of roofing contractors that we work with right now is who we're working with. Is why that's one of my top of mind. Is they're like, well, they're never going to pay it anyways. Well, yeah, you didn't put it on your estimate. They're not going to pay it. You're right. So that's one of the big ones. The other one is documentation, which is kind of like saying systems and processes to contractors, like snooze fest. But no, I will get, you'll want to write a roof maybe for $48,000 and you'll come to me with 3 pictures. A close-up of the shingle where the hail hit, maybe a picture of maybe a chimney or something, and then the grass where they dropped their phone. And that's it. We're supposed to write a $48,000 estimate using that documentation. It's wild. So not only are they not adding the right line items, they're not asking for O&P, and they're not documenting. It's like, yeah, no wonder you guys are, out there floundering and, not making it in the insurance world. It's a pretty big problem to fix, but it's easily fixable if you know where to pull the levers.
That makes sense. So, let's talk about the documentation briefly. So, what kind of documentation would you look for on a standard, composition, shingle, roof, hail claim?
Yeah, great question. Just going for the roof. First thing, if you're doing that kind of work, you're probably doing a lot of picture documenting per day. So just get a photo of the front of the home just to save yourself, because that's one of the things I always tell adjusters, because they do in CAT situations 8-9 claims a day when they were working as IAs, independent adjusters. So that's where that comes out of. It's like, don't shoot yourself in the foot. So get a picture of the home and then start from the top down. So we're going to start on the roof. You're going to document the damage. Now, the question is, has the roof been fully replaced by the adjuster already? Or do we have a repair that has a discontinued shingle that needs to turn into a replacement? So those 2 photo files are going to look a little bit different, but I'll go with roof replacement because that's probably your most, that's the easiest one to attack. So if they've already bought the roof and you're trying to go for roof replacement, you're going to want to go ahead and get a picture of every flashing that you can on that roof, because a lot of adjusters come back and say, we don't replace anything that's not directly damaged by the hail itself or wind or whatever it is, directly damaged by the peril. So consequential damages do come into play, and the adjuster needs to understand that. So if you can show them with a photo visually, if you pick up the edge of the shingle and how that nail, flashing is nailed to that surface, when you pull that nail out, now you have a damaged flashing per IRC code that's enforced in most areas. Even if it's enforceable or not, doesn't matter. I can't put a flashing with a hole in it back on that roof. That's reinstalling damaged material. If you don't have that photo and you've got 12 turtle vents on the roof, you've lost probably anywhere from 480 to 650 just in that alone, just depending on the area you work in. We here in Utah are pretty high end in a lot of our areas, but you get the idea. That starts to build a case, and I say, present your case almost like you're a detective. If this does that and that does that, then this is what's going to happen. That's the outcome of dealing with, the main component that you're asking me to remove and replace. So that's big. Usually people don't get photos of that. And just any of the other consequential damage, if the shingles butt up against maybe another type of roofing material, your step L flashing, like I mentioned, all of that. So just trying to document, if I remove these shingles, and then of course, if you can pull up the first course of shingles, you first get on the roof, That's going to tell you so much. Is there ice and water shield? What's the underlayment? How's that drip edge installed? Are the gutters attached through the drip edge? Now I have to do a DNR gutters. All kinds of wormholes can be opened up by taking a picture of that first course of shingles. So that's just some of the high points that I can think of that most people do not document.
No, I think that's super helpful. And because documentation is such an interesting thing. And I think sometimes contractors don't realize that they do need to document as well. You know, they're not adjusters, they're not public adjusters. But if you're going to be talking repairs, again, not policy, but repairs with the adjusters, you need to be able to show why you're doing what you're doing. And that includes having lots of photos, especially if you're arguing like a discontinued roof. You know, you need to be able to show what you did to figure that out, why it's not possible, why you can't do a spot repair from a salvage yard. And the documentation just gets, I mean, massive, right?
Yeah, you don't have to overdo it. Just think if you're trying to prove this in the public court of opinion, even just like if I had to show someone who doesn't know what the heck a flashing is, it's like, you know, not demeaning anybody in the industry, but just like if they were 7 years old, like how would you show them that this is put together and why it would need to be replaced? That's the kind of photos that you want to bring to the table. But like for instance, there was a repair. This insurance company wanted a contractor to repair like a 60-year-old metal roof that had blown off just one or two facets of the roof, and underneath that was a layer of laminate, a layer of three or two layers of 3-tab, and then asphalt or not shake shingles underneath that, which are probably nailed to the bats. Right? There's no shell, and all they paid for was the remove and replace of that metal and a little bit of sheathing, and that was it. It was like, whoa, this is wild. So in those instances, it just depends on what can of worms you're opening up, of course, but that would definitely need to be documented, you know, highly. But just saying, you know, it just depends on what kind of job you got on your hands and how you can paint the picture to the adjuster to get paid as easily as possible. Makes your life easier too. Yes, you spend a little bit more time out in the field, but guess what? You won't have to go drive back and get those photos again. Get them the first time. That's the other thing that I teach is have a checklist, get them the first time. Everything's beautiful. Now you get your estimate paid. How can it be a bad thing?
I'm so interested on these multiple layer roofs because we still see this all the time, but especially after a hurricane, we see a lot of it. Do you write, so for the layers below the top layer, do you write remove or remove and replace?
Oh, yeah, I have to make remove because we're not going back with 4 layers of shingles.
I figured, right? Logistically, it's so interesting. Like, so adjusters argue about this all the time, right? Logistically, you're not going back with all those layers. You're not putting a shake back on and then putting a 3-tab, and then we couldn't even do that anyway, and then putting metal. But some people are like, well, they're entitled to their pre-loss condition, which included, you know, 16 layers of roof. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't do it. So you're not writing for it.
It would violate usually manufacturer specifications if you did that. And code hinges on manufacturer specs. So it's like you're opening a what? Yeah, no. And I teach go back with what's legitimate and reasonable. And so that's one of the things, you know, that's really I believe set us apart at Estimate Mastery from a lot of people out there. I'm never going to judge how you rate estimates. We're estimators, right? We're estimating damage at the end of the day. What you write, what I write, what my colleague, you know, that I work with, Alicia, writes is all going to be different probably in some way because we're estimating. But whatever's legitimate and necessary to bring back the property to the condition before the loss, that's what we're talking about. No fluff. No, I'm going to put a generator on this because they're not going to pay O&P, but they would have paid, you know, no. If you're using a generator, great. If you're not, don't do that. Why would you commit insurance fraud? That's dumb. Sorry, I don't mean to use legal terms. I probably get in trouble, but
you're good.
You know,
you're not offending me.
So that's what I stand behind is, but I will add extra labor hours for hand carrying debris. There was an HOA situation where that home or that condo set back, you know, this long, beautiful pathway. Well, we can't drop a dumpster at the curb. HOA doesn't allow it. They had to hand carry debris probably a quarter mile to get to that dumpster. I got to account for that. It's not going to be a line item in Xactimate, but it's going to be labor in Xactimate. So you just have to be mindful of what are you actually touching on the job and document it. I just took a picture of that beautiful pathway and said, look, dumpster's way down there and we got it paid. You just got to show them what's up.
Yeah. I mean, we have that all the time. I remember a clay roof I handled and it was set so far back and it had so much landscaping that like, there's no other way to say it. It almost looked like Egyptians building the pyramid, the way they had to carry these clay tiles up the roof, right? You would see all these guys with like 3 to 5 tiles over their head.
Wow.
walking like little ants, like down the street and up a path and then up a ladder. And there was no other way for them to do it. They couldn't get a lift. They couldn't get it nearby. They had to, I think it was about an eighth of a mile. They had to go down about an eighth of a mile to drop the pallets of tiles. So they literally had no option to get these tiles in this yard or to get anything near. And then, of course, the reason we got hired was the carrier said that the labor was far too expensive. You kind of wanted to tell the adjuster, well, why don't you go do it? Because I guarantee you it's not fun. But you're right. And you have to account for that. So why do you think ultimately like contractors have so many problems finding the right line items?
You don't know what you don't know. It's like anything. They're not educated, and they're not educated in the software correctly. That's all. And no one wants to seem to slow down to get the education that they need to make the profits that they should. They'd rather go sell 50 more jobs than go take, a week-long class. I'm not saying that our class is a week long or anything, but just giving you a scenario that would then make them, be able to bring home 25% more profits on those 50 jobs. No, they'd rather just go sell the 50 jobs and wrap their next truck. I'm like, whoa, you gotta slow down a little bit. Don't step over a dollar to save a dime. It's like, what are you doing? Pay for training, get educated, just like anything in life. I didn't wake up and yesterday know how to do my taxes. Like I had to go figure out how business taxes work. Same thing with if you're going to take care of your business, and especially if you're going to grow and scale. Why would you grow and scale something that's like rotting? Like you got to fix the roots of the issue, not knowing what you don't know, get educated. And then it was like a snowball. It starts out incrementally. Like I said, maybe it's 500 to 1,000 per job that you're leaving behind. You're running 20 jobs a month times $1,000 that you're leaving, $20,000 times 12. That's $240,000 over the course of a year. You just left on the table and let the insurance companies pocket that profit. So if you're going to keep doing that, you do you. But that's what we're here for. That's why I'm really excited. Really at the heart, I know it's altruistic or whatever you want to say. But what gets me out of bed in the morning is I get to help small businesses stay in business. Because if you're not profitable, you're not going to be able to pay your employees and support yourself. What's the point in scaling something like that? So that's my little soapbox.
No, it's not a soapbox at all. I think it's true. I think it's accurate. So let's talk about that for a little bit. So Xactimate training, we'll cover some more Xactimate stuff. But in some of the time we do have left, I'd like to talk about Xactimate training. Like if I don't know, if your best friend became a contractor and they're a storm restoration contractor, what would you tell them they really need to learn, and what would you tell them that process looks like? Like how long should they spend? What kind of classes should they go to for Xactimate?
Yeah, well, firstly, of course, I've worked hard over the years to put a lot of free content out there. So there's the Estimate Mastery YouTube channel. I would throw them into I have a beginner Xactimate walkthrough where I start at the very beginning of the process to the very end. So just that is something that I think is so valuable. People open software and don't really know what buttons are pushing and what that does on the back end. Just
all
having,
the time.
Unfortunately, all the time. And so there's actually a 4-step estimating process through Xactimate. So if you understand, okay, it's step 1, step 2, it's like your brain works off of, I check those boxes. And then repetitively, if you do, start writing estimates in that 4-step process over and over again, we'll just get you started. As far as the line items and all of that, I have a lot of stuff over on YouTube. I don't want to toot my own horn. And then there's other tools in Xactimate, such as like macros that you can build that will be pre-populated checklists that you can just slide over. Okay, it's a layout style roof. Bam, there's my macro, which is a checklist. I put everything that you need on that checklist, and then whatever you don't, you can delete off. The reason I do that, I would always leave chimney flashing off of estimates. Like my eye would see it, but I would never add it to the estimate. Well, now my macros, it's there. I have to deal with it or delete it. So that way I have a foolproof system of not leaving line items behind because I've built macros for myself in Xactimate. That's one of the most powerful tools that most contractors.
That's awesome. I want to ask you about macros for a minute. So I feel like this is a surprisingly disputed topic, right? Is macros. So I'm gathering from you that you are a fan of using macros and templates. Fair?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. But there's also pitfalls with that, right? And so let's talk about kind of the responsible use of macros and templates. Because I can tell you from my end, I can't tell you how many times I'm reading an estimate, whether it's from the insurance adjuster or a public adjuster or a contractor. And it's just not true. Like there's things in there that just make no friggin' sense. And I know what the answer is, which is they used a macro or they used a template. Um, so let's talk about what that process actually looks like. Like you called it a checklist, but like go deeper with me. Tell me if you're a contractor, like what you, or even an adjuster, what you need to be doing if you're using macros regularly.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would respond to it just like with anything to do with technology and now AI. Be a human being and double check your work before you send it out the door. That's what you have to do. So going back to the root of what macros are, like I said, they're just lists of line items. It's a fancy way of saying lists of line items. And some of the danger, like you're talking about with that, is you can attach what are called F9 notes, which can be blobs of text that if you don't know if your macro contains that. For example, there's one that I built that with roof measurement reports. If they don't want to pay waste on like a steep or high charge, well, I have a very certain way of saying, well, you left off the waste. Perhaps maybe that wasn't the issue on that estimate. They actually shorted the steep charge and didn't add any. Well, if I add a macro that has this gobbledygook thing about talking about a different scenario, that's stupid, right? So in macros, what I've built, and you can get really granular, you can kind of go down a crazy rabbit trail if you let yourself. But I have one for an adjuster meeting. I have one for turning a repair into a replacement. I have one for just a supplement estimate that I'm going to write. But that's how I organize it. So my meeting, the one for adjuster meeting, has no notes attached because I know I'm going to be speaking with the adjuster. I don't need to address anything. There's nothing to talk about yet. So you have to be intentional by the way you set these things up and be a human being, but always just take a moment, read through your completed PDF at the end and be like, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to do that. Because I do personally have a macro that has a note, like I said, with the waist and steep and high. I actually have several notes and I have to delete off the one that doesn't apply to the scenario. So yeah, I train myself to double, triple check before it goes out the door. But you are a human being. Human beings make mistakes. It is what it is. But it saves so much time. And is a system that you can hand off to a contractor. That's what's beautiful about macros too. They don't have to create them. We can do that for them in our program. That's our paid training program. But we can give macros to you that are pre-templatized that we don't have to, make those mistakes. That's what I would say.
No, that makes sense. I think the biggest part is, yeah, what you said, be a human. So you got to slow down. You got to pay attention. That's awesome that you provide these macros to contractors, right? But the contractor then has to be responsible with the macro and can't just assume the macro applies to every situation. It sounds to me like you have macros that save you time, but more importantly, they keep you from forgetting things. But I don't think it speeds it up that much for you because you've got so many notes. There's so much complexity to it that you're having to take out a lot of things. You're having to delete notes. So you're still spending time on your estimates. You're not just speeding through because you have a macro, right?
Correct. Yeah, you still have to. Well, I just because the way that we train, it's just certain scenarios that we build and for we help we help them customize the macro to their situation. So it still would take me, it's a one-click macro that adds 68 line items to a laminate shingle, for example. I still would say it's going to save you time rather than having to go and find every category in selector code or do what most contractors do, which is go into that main search bar and just type in every single line item. Most people don't know their codes either for them, but the macro does. I still fight for the fact that I think it saves you time.
Good. No, I think that's a good thing. I'm not anti-macro. I'm anti me sitting in a deposition realizing that this contractor or public adjuster is about to get hammered because they used macros without checking them. That's my entire political viewpoint. It's a problem. It's a problem.
That is the problem. You have to be a human being, and you also have to design the macros with safeguards that so
I think it's really the responsibility on the back end of it, right? It's actually taking that time to look at it and figure it out. So kind of as we get closer to the end of our time, one of the things I'd like to discuss, because I know you've got a million examples, but can you think of recently like a small fix you made to an estimate that made a big difference in terms of numbers?
Every day. Repricing to today's current material pricing. With all of it's not as drastic as it was like with supply chain issues and things like that, but that's an easy one-click button that most people forget to do. That usually, the other day it added about $3,200 from reprice from October of last year to today's date. So it can be huge. Sometimes it's minimal, but that's an easy one that, it's warranted, it's necessary. However, you need to reprice to the date of when the job was completed, is, cost incurred. So that's the only caveat to that is if, you did the job last October and it has an October price list, don't reprice it to today. That's not what I'm saying. But that's just a one click that I see a lot of people just forget. They just forget to do the reprice.
Yeah, and it's such an easy thing too, right? Like I remember when these supply chain issues were going on and we'd be like, hey, update your pricing. The insurance company hasn't paid anything and it's been 4 months. And I mean, on bigger claims, it would skyrocket. I mean, crazy increase. Like, I mean, real money, right? Not like, oh, whatever. I only added like $400 to this. Like, no, like massive difference, like life-changing money for the insureds and good money for the adjusters and contractors.
100%.
That's wild. All right. Well, we're kind of reaching the end of our time together, but before we jump into like our final question, what kind of parting advice do you have for these contractors that are getting into Xactimate and struggling and, not as profitable as they should be?
I would say just educate yourself. There's tons of free education out there. Not only my channel, there's other channels out there that you can go and get tons of free resources. First thing you would want to do, well, definitely learn the 4-step estimating process to begin with, and then study line items. Study your click for details. That's the fastest way to get up to speed. Xactimate is organized into categories. So if you're a roofer, you'll live in the RFG category for a while and just learn all those line items. There's codes for laminate, metal, all of that. If you're a siding guy, go live in the siding. If you're doing mitigation, restoration, there's categories there like drywall, painting that you'll need to know. The hazardous materials. If you're doing a lot of mitigation, maybe you work with Cat 3 water, whatever it is, whatever your trade is, there's a trade code for it in Xactimate, and just live and breathe in there, looking at all the line items and getting to know it really well. And then just start writing estimates. That's the thing with any kind of coaching or knowledge-based education, parameter. Just go do the thing. Don't live in theory world forever. Go. I tell people, just go. What if the tree fell through your house? Let's walk through a scenario. If you don't have a job right now, what would you do with that, information? Anything that you can do to get your feet wet and just get in there and start doing the actions. That's going to be probably the biggest hurdle. And then, of course, knowing the line items is secondary to that.
That's massive. Alena, you've been great. We've enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed listening to you. But before you go, I do have to ask you, what does it mean to you to level up?
Leveling up to me means slowing down to learn the things that are going to pay off big in the long run. I think we live in a dopamine-based society where it's easier for me to just go lay on my bed and look at Instagram than see, what the next line item that's coming out is. So I love education. I think it's so beautiful what you can learn. And you don't have to make it hard on yourself to level up. Just take the next baby step today that you can. And all these baby steps will add up to a mile rather than you not taking any action.
Alena, you're amazing. And we all appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. I was glad to be here and I appreciate the chat.
I'd like to thank Alena Wilson for joining us on the podcast. She focuses really on the human element of using a computer like Xactimate. And she's so right. She says that in a dopamine world, we want to focus on Instagram instead of learning what the next line items are. So let's take a break from our phones. Let's focus on the line items. Let's learn what they are, because you don't know what you don't know. And then watch your profitability go up. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player.